I just got an email with Nathan Lewin. There's a case coming up to the Supreme Court about a guy who wanted a dominion in his house. Local town opposed it.
That's happened before. That's should be an open.
Not to the Supreme Court, but it's an interesting case. We'll see what happens with that.
Okay, some learning announcements. Year of Learning, sponsored by Julian Boris Kagan, commemorates year of Julian's father, Yitzhak Ben Mottel. Monthly learning sponsored in memory of Ilana Gottfried, Ilana Chanabas, Rabbi Yossi Abraham. A monthly learning sponsored by the Morkowitz and Cheskel families, commemorating the year of Mr. Leon Morkowitz, Cheskel Arida Ben. Naftali, a week of learning sponsored by Lori Teb and family in loving memory of Jay Teb. Yonalei Ben Moshe on his first yahrzeit, and a week of learning sponsored by Sharon and Michael Glass to commemorate the yahrzeit of Sharon's mother, Ida Cohen. I have us to cover the Torah on the third of the year.
Okay, good morning. Happy Yom Ha'atzmaut to everybody. Go out and have a falafel or bop somebody. I had one of those hampers to do in Israel. But the day should be commemorated and celebrated. Despite what's going on in the Middle East. Most of you, I would assume, have some type of a cable TV connection. Channel 14 is the Israeli channel, and it's live. And occasionally they have stuff in English, but most of it is in Hebrew, but there are English subtitles scrolled across the bottom. But it's the Israel channel, and you can see what's going on in real time in Israel, both politically, culturally, and so forth. So it's worth checking in on Channel 14 if you have a chance on your cable TV. Many people from Fair Lawn have moved to Florida, particularly the area in Boca, and there's a whole community of our Fair Lawn residents there in Century Village. And there's an issue that came up, and it's not only referring to, the Fair Lawn people, but in general, people in Florida and other places. What happens when a person gets older, infirm, and it's hard to walk to shul? What accommodations can be made for a person like that? When you can't walk any distance and you're not living right next door to the shul. Are there any ways to make it easier for these people to get to shul? So one of the inventions that came up in Israel is something called a grumma switch. And a grumma switch allows you to operate motorized vehicles. Or in some cases, telephones, where when you open it up, you're not directly opening up a circuit, and there's a delayed reaction so that there's an indirect connection to electricity or some type of a power source, which technically avoids some of the isurim of Shabbos. There are a number of physicians, for example, who carry or have at home these type of telephones for emergency uses. Hospitals use these things. People who have electric wheelchairs on Shabbos have it equipped with a special grumma switch. And that's a technical way of avoiding this particular issue. The Jewish mind is very, very fertile when it comes to being creative. We have some brilliant ways where the rabbis came up with ways, I wouldn't say of circumventing the halacha necessarily, but of adapting halachic rules and standards to make certain things possible. The classic example of that is prusbul. The Torah says every 7 years, debts get canceled. And what was happening was people stopped lending money to other people who were in need in the fifth or sixth year of the 7-year cycle, which caused financial hardship. So the rabbis came up with this Prisbul idea where the Beis Din takes over, again, a technical way to avoid the problem. Again, the rabbis instituted Heter Iska, which allows you to charge interest, to do business. There are a lot of things they come up with. Selling chametz is another brilliant idea that the rabbis. So, I don't necessarily agree with Blue Greenberg's notion that if there's a rabbinic will, there's a rabbinic way. But the truth is, very often, when there are thorny problems that come up, the rabbis find ways around it. They haven't come up with a way to solve a guna yet, although there are ways, just haven't implemented. But for certain things, they are very, very creative, very, very creative. And there are halachos that deal with people who are infirm or people who are ill in terms of Shabbos. The whole creation of the concept of a Shabbos goy is a way of, I wouldn't say getting around the halacha, but it's a way of accomplishing needs for certain people who otherwise would be stuck because they are old or infirm and can't do certain things. But there are halachos that even how do you use a Shabbos goy? You can't just tell a Shabbos goy, do this and do that. If he knows intuitively what to do, then that's something else. But and there are some interesting people who in their early careers had that job. Elvis Presley was a Shabbos goy. Andrew Cuomo, Andrew Cuomo's father, Governor Cuomo, first Governor Cuomo, was a Shabbos goy in his youth, and General Powell was a Shabbos goy. So you have some. It's people do that. When you can't do something on Shabbos and there is a legitimate need, and how we define that legitimate need is important. A chole sheyesh bo sakana, if it's a sick person who is in danger, it's life-threatening, then all bets are off. Then you don't have to worry about the halacha. But if you have a chole she'ein bo sakana, a person who is infirm or ill, but not dangerously so, can the halacha be suspended, or is there a go-around? And in Florida, there are a lot of old people, and they don't all live right next to a shul. So what can we do to help these people get to shul in a way that doesn't violate Shabbos? They can't drive. You can't call a taxi. That would be more direct. I remember many, many years ago, a friend of mine was a rabbi in Europe. Trying to think which city he was in. And he worked out a deal where senior citizens could show a pass and ride the buses for free to get to shul. All right, no money had to be exchanged. The bus drivers and the bus companies accepted this, and they would pay after shop, whatever it might be. Unfortunately, even though the deal sounded like a good deal, the community wrote him out of town on a rail. He lost his job because of this, because it didn't go through any kind of process with Gedolei HaPoskim to approve this particular procedure. And they felt it was inappropriate, and he lost his job, unfortunately. Rabbi Yazger in Boca was faced with the same problem. It's an aging community. There are people who use walkers or canes or wheelchairs, and they can't get to shul on Shabbos. During the week, it's easier, but on Shabbos, they can't get to shul. So he came up with an idea, but unlike my friend in Europe, he needed to get sanction from a recognized posek to put his plan into action. I have here the written tshuva from Herschel Schachter, to whom he addressed the question. He originally started working on it with somebody else who passed away in the middle of the discussion, so he continued with Rav Schachter. And the category that we're talking about is chole she'ein bo sakana. If you have an infirm person, a sick person, or an elderly person who is not in any physical danger, but he's simply not well or well enough to do certain things. What can you do concerning Shabbos in order to get this person to shul? What, again, before you get to the shul and the bus issue, in the category of chole she'ein bo sakana, what are you allowed to do? What are you not allowed to do? So if you, for example, there is a rule that you can't take medicine on Shabbos, because originally you had to crush the medicine and compound it and so forth. You can't do that on Shabbos. So chole she'ein bo sakana, if you have a sniffle or if you have a headache, it's not really considered a danger. But if a person really doesn't feel well, a different category. Chole she'ein bo sakana, you can do certain things, but not other things. You can ask a non-Jew to do certain things. Also, it depends how you do it also. You can't just say to a non-Jew, please do this for me. You can say, if this and such happened, I'd be very appreciative. A friend of mine's grandfather, who was very old in a wheelchair, and he had an attendant, and late on Shabbos afternoon, he would say, it would be very nice if somebody would turn the light on. That's how he got around it, But you can't be that direct. Yeah.
Is the halacha different when you're doing something for the Rabbi versus an individual? I remember Rabbi Greene telling us that if the Erev went down, right, and you wanted to basically take your shalosh shudas across the street, you cannot ask the guy to do that.
Correct.
But if you're talking about for 30 people that the food is across the street by Rabbi Yehuda, that you need to bring it over, but for the Rabbi, you can do it, but for the individual, you cannot.
Yeah, Tzorach Rabim is also one of those categories in halakha, but you have to know when to apply it. Again, in all of these situations, it's not black and white, and that's why we have poskim to make a determination. What might seem logical in one situation might not fit the halakha parameters in another situation. So what Rabbi Yasger worked out with Rabbi Schechter's approval is to have what they call the Shabbos, and the bus goes around the community. It stops at every single bus stop, and people who cannot otherwise, and that's key, people who cannot otherwise get to shul. That's key. If you're able to get to shul, even though it might be uncomfortable or it may take you a long time, you don't qualify. And that's a sticking point, because there are some people who take advantage. Im kvar askar. If it's already there, all right, I'll take the bus. It'll save me 15 minutes, and it's very hot outside. That heter doesn't apply in that situation. If there's no other way you can get to shul, that's what the Shabbos is for. There's a non-Jewish driver. He stops at every single stop. And anybody, if someone's there, they can get on, and he takes you to the shul. Or to
Shabbos elevator.
It's similar to the Shabbos elevator, which stops at every floor, whether people get on or not. And it waits, and it goes on. So clearly it's for, again, based on the halach of a chole she'ein bo sakana. We're not talking about somebody who is dangerously ill, but a person who cannot otherwise get to shul. And it's not to be used. And again, you have the halacha, and then you have people who take advantage of the halacha, and it doesn't really apply to them. If it's raining, it's not a heter. If it's too hot, it's not a heter. It's only for those who cannot otherwise, if you're in a wheelchair and it's not a motorized wheelchair, and there's no way you could push yourself all the way to shul, that's for you. If you walk with a cane, but you can't walk more than 15, 20 paces, but if you can walk with a cane, it's not for you. If you can't walk, if there's no other way you can get to shul, and there's, once they got the original heter to do this, there's a whole bunch of parameters that were added. Let's see. One of the first halachos, if I can use, in this Shabbos scenario, when people move into that particular community, they should try, if it's within their resources, to buy an apartment within walking distance of the shul, close enough to the shul, so they wouldn't have to take advantage of this bus. Now that's something that most people forget, but it's in the rules. Yeah.
So you said, if someone walks with a cane and it would just, can only, let's say, walk 3 blocks, and then it's like too much already.
Yeah.
Okay. But because he can walk the 3 blocks, the Rabbanim say, well, if you can walk 3 blocks, it'll just take you longer. You can walk 7 blocks.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
that would really be a breaking point after 3 blocks.
Correct. And a person like that could take the bus. No. Again, if a person is able to walk with a cane, in general, it's just he needs for support, that's not for him. But a person cannot physically walk more than the 2 or 3 blocks, that's for him. But again, it's also, and also, by the way, when you get off, let the driver know that it's your stop. Obviously, you can't pull the buzzer. Yeah, Milton.
Being a resident of Century Village and having seen what's going on with the Shabbos.
Yes.
Unfortunately, there are people who take advantage of
Mhm.
it, and they should not take advantage.
Correct.
I know it's right before just talking about it, not speaking Lashon Hara. But there are people that take advantage.
Yes, I know.
But it is rather helpful for people who otherwise would not be able to get.
I have no doubt in my mind that it is a wonderful way to get people to go to shul. I have no problem. The fact that Rav Schechter approved of it, and again, within halakhic guidelines, if a person qualifies as a chole she'ein bo sakana, he's a chole, he's infirm, he's not in any life-threatening danger, but he is infirm, meaning he can't get. Now, if a person has a walker or a cane and he can make the walk, it may take him a half an hour, but he's capable of doing it, and during the week he goes for walks anyway, then that bus is not for him. It's for a person who physically is incapable of walking any distance. That's who it's. Yeah.
And he also said something about one of the halachas was try to get an apartment that is close.
Correct.
Even the closest one down in Boca is a distance for people who are really infirm.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, as you get older or if something happens, you become more infirm.
Correct.
So when you bought the apartment, you were not infirm. And
then that's fine. That's what the bus is for. It's for those people who, when originally they could do it, now they can't. It's for them. It gets them to shul.
And we even made the last minyan, later than it was before, so that people who take the Shabbos will get there on time for the beginning of that. We used to have the last minyan at 9 o'clock, then it got moved to 9:15. Now we made it to 9:30. Why? Because the Shabbos only begins at 9 o'clock. On weekends, Saturday and Sunday, in general, the buses don't run until 9 o'clock.
Right.
All other days, they start at 8 o'clock.
Right.
So we couldn't get them to, they have to stick with the 9 o'clock. Now, we've been trying to speak to whoever can speak to try to get them to move earlier.
Make it earlier, right.
Shabbos if we can.
Okay.
That is a political nightmare
This thing
to
is
try
not-
to
You're
try
right.
to do
The
that.
bus is not run.
Yes.
You keep talking about physical.
Yes.
What
Why
about
is it-
mental?
okay.
Let's say if it's 70 degrees, the guy would walk to shul. It's 100 degrees. He's saying to himself, I don't want to suffer walking to shul.
Yeah,
I'm
that-
not gonna go to shul.
that's
But
a
it's
very
not-
fine- That's a very fine line. That's a very, very fine line. If it's just a question of discomfort, then I can't help. If it's a question of a person might get heat stroke, you should stay home. So don't put yourself in danger. Now, does that qualify for going on the bus on Shabbos? Could be. You'd have to ask a Shiloh. I don't know for sure. Again, if it's 100 degrees outside, and it's dangerous to his health to walk that distance, is it better for him to stay at home? Or can he qualify to take the bus under those
But he
circumstances?
He could walk it, but in his mind, he's saying, I'm not gonna do it because I don't want to suffer.
Okay, but if a person is 85 years old, he shouldn't be walking in that kind of a heat. Yes,
Couple. One is able to walk, one is not able to walk. Can they both take the bus, or one take the bus, the other one not?
no, if you're able to walk, you can't take the bus.
Say, the spouse or the other couple can. If she goes along. In other
If
words,
the spouse that can't walk takes the bus. Again, the problem with this, you see, and here we get into a gray area of halacha. You know, as Rabbi Yudin used the expression, im kfar askvar. You know, once you start, it's very hard to stop. And once you allow it, so as Milty pointed out, people will take advantage. People will take advantage for whom this bus was not intended. And again, it's the same thing with the selling of the chametz we just went through in Pesach. Rabbi Yudin is usually very makpid that people should not sell chametz gomer, real chametz. You know, if you have a couple of frozen bagels in your freezer, that should not be part of your mechiras chametz, according to Rabbi Yudin. According to others, if you're selling chametz, you're selling chametz. Again, what was the original mechiras chametz intended for? Bakers, people who are in business, not average persons at home. Everybody at home cleaned out before you had refrigeration, people cleaned out all their chametz. They got rid of it before Pesach. Everything.
They didn't have much.
Well, they didn't have much to begin with. That's another story. Today, people just lock up the closet. There's bread, there's rolls, there's cereal, there's bagels, and they just include it in mechiras chametz. Myself, Rabbi Yudin, and others do not sell chametz gomer. The only possible exception might be your liquor cabinet. And there's a machlokas whether whiskey is considered chametz gomer or tarovas chametz. So you can play around with that a little bit.
This year I saw my chametz from Rabbi Markowitz. He had
He allows you to sell chametz gomer.
but he asked me, do I have any whiskey? And I said, yes, and he put that in the store of flavor that there's whiskey.
Yeah, I had it in mind also. Yeah. So again, the halakhic mind, brilliant minds, are able to find workarounds in many, many cases. There's an interesting book called The Shabbos Goy. The title of the book, The Shabbos Goy, tracing the history of using non-Jews to do stuff for you on Shabbos that you can't do. When is it permitted? When is it not permitted? When are violations of Shabbos allowed? For example, if you are a farmer and you have cows have to be milked every day because it's painful for a cow to have a full udder of milk. All right? What do you do on Shabbos? You can't milk the cow on Shabbos. And the answer is yes, you can. Because you don't want, Tsar Balei Chaim is very, very important, but you let the milk just go on the ground. You don't use that milk. And when Israel became much more mechanized, so you now have electric milking machines. What do you do on Shabbos? And the rabbis had to deal with that issue. There are many religious agricultural kibbutzim and farming, how do you work that out? And there are many rabbis spend hours and hours and volumes on working out these issues to allow religious Jews to observe Shabbos on their farms. Again, there are heterim, but you have to parse them very, very carefully. Otherwise, it becomes wholesale chilul Shabbos, which unfortunately occurs with the Shabbos. There are people on the Shabbos who use it for convenience. They're too lazy to walk to shul, or it's too hot, or they just don't want to make the walk. The bus was not intended for them.
Well, how do you know the bus driver is not Jewish?
Ah, good question. So in Boca, almost all of the bus drivers are non-Jewish. The only time there's been a problem is occasionally on holidays where people are off. There might be a Jewish bus driver here or there. So you really have to know who your drivers are. But the vast majority of them are non-Jewish. Occasionally, when somebody has to fill in as a substitute, you might get a Jewish driver, and that could be problematic. But again, the bus stops at every single place. And again, when you get off, you get off. When you get on, you get on. But it's only for those people who are in the category of a chola she'ein bo sakana. And if you're not considered a chola she'ein bo sakana, if you're perfectly healthy, but you're just lazy, or it's raining or drizzling outside, or it might be a little bit too hot, that's not what the bus was intended for. It was intended to allow people to get to shul who otherwise could not get to shul, who qualify, again, within the halakhic cap. If it's a chola sheyesh bo sakana, he wouldn't be on the bus altogether, wouldn't be going to shul. Because you can do all kinds of things. You could take medicine if you're chola she'ein bo sakana. You can do certain things, but you have to fit within the halakhic category, even though the rabbis came up with heterim, but the heterim are not wholesale.
Wally,
Yes.
what about you have a beloved pet and he gets hit by a car? Can you take him to the emergency room?
Interesting question. Take him to the emergency room. I don't know if Hatzalah works for animals. Interesting question. If you have a pet that is injured and has to go to the emergency room, interesting question. So the only thing that I could think of, there's a tshuva of Avadia Yosef. If an animal, a horse or a donkey, fell into a hole in the street, can you assist in taking that animal out of the hole on Shabbos? And he paskins yes. That's the only thing that I can think of offhand. Going to the emergency room, it's an interesting question. I don't know the answer to that. You'd have to ask somebody more qualified. That's an interesting question. Can you take an injured pet to the emergency room on Shabbos? I would assume that if a neighbor should probably do that. That would my initial reaction would be. A neighbor should do that. But again, all of these halachic workarounds do have parameters. And the problem with us as Jews, as we don't study the halachic framework and structure for all of these things, we accept it wholesale, and then we go and paskin for ourselves. If such a Shabbos exists, people don't look at the fine print. And if it's a bus, I'll take it. And that's a problem that we as Jews sometimes face. That once you take a heter and you just take it to the next step without necessarily having it approved halachically. The Shabbos was originally created for those who could not make it to shul otherwise.
Wally,
Yes, I'll get it.
what about medication that a
Not a
person
problem.
takes
Not a
they takes
problem.
every day.
Not a problem. Not a problem. If you take medicine every day, that means you need it. Otherwise, it will put you into the category of a chol sheyesh bo sakana. Yeah.
So back to the elevator situation. So you see that people take the Shabbos elevator.
Yes.
But they are capable of walking up the stairs.
Yes.
So that's become the same issue.
Yeah, it's the Shabbos elevator, and by the way, not everybody is totally enamored of the Shabbos elevator. Because when they first came up with the concept of Shabbos elevator, there are two institutes of science and technology in Israel that work on these type of issues. And one of the concerns was if too many people get on the elevator, a whole crowd is waiting for it to come to your floor, does that increase in the load increase the energy used to move the elevator? So they had to do some scientific research to determine that the amount of energy used for the extra weight is so infinitesimal because the elevator is built to carry a larger load that it doesn't make a difference. But not everybody is in favor of it. If you are on the second floor and you're just too lazy to walk up one flight of stairs, is the Shabbos elevator for you? Technically, it's not a problem. Should you do it is another story.
It's not somebody operating it.
Well, there's nobody operating it. There's nobody operating the Shabbos elevator. However, again, who was it meant for? It was meant for those people who could not walk up several flights of stairs. Very often, if I'm in a hotel with a Shabbos or a building with a Shabbos elevator, and I may not want to walk up 6 flights of stairs. I can certainly walk down 6 flights of stairs. So I may take it up, but I won't take it down. I remember, and there are different types of Shabbos elevators also. And what about a situation? I give you a Ma'aser Shahaya. When I was doing my rabbinic internship many years ago with a very, very prominent New York rabbi. And we had lunch in his house, Shabbos after davening. And we go to this fancy building on the east side. And the elevator operator greets him, Rabbi so-and-so. And we walk into the elevator. And the elevator operator knows every Shabbos, when this rabbi comes in, he doesn't ask him he just takes him up. It wasn't a Shabbos elevator, it was an actual elevator operator. And he looked at me, I looked at him, and he said, I discussed it with Soloveitchik, he said it was okay. But after lunch, I walked down. Yesh v'yesh. There are different interpretations of how you do stuff. Clearly, he couldn't walk up all those flights of stairs, but perhaps I could have. I was much younger then. So again, all of these workarounds to deal with contemporary situation, it's not new. It started with Pruzbul. It continued on to many takanos that Chazal made to allow Jewish life to function. But when they made these takanos and gezeros, they were for specific situations. And the trouble is that we as Jews take it upon ourselves to extend the original heter to do certain things, and we take it to the next level, which may not always be appropriate. So even though you have a Shabbos in Boca, it is meant for certain individuals and not others, and people should be aware of the parameters. People move into the community, they may not look at all the guidelines. There's a whole booklet of guidelines for the bus. And I've been willing to guarantee that nobody has read this tshuva. I guarantee it. So there are guidelines. There are specific guidelines, and even though the rabbinic mind is very, very creative to allow certain things to be done to function in modern contemporary society, it's all done within specific rules. The rules allow you to do certain things. It's called koach dehetera, but it's within a halachic structure. It very rarely do the rabbis give a blanket heter to do something. They come up with brilliant, there is something called a carbon microphone. A carbon microphone was invented for religious hospitals where they had to page doctors, okay? But they were concerned about Chilul Shabbos. So they invented a certain type of carbon mic, similar to the Grumma switch. But anyway, it was a special microphone that was invented initially on ships in the Israeli Navy to avoid Chilul Shabbos whenever possible. I mean, if you're in the Navy, whatever. But it was invented for the Navy ships. They used it in the hospitals. And one enterprising, nominally Orthodox rabbi installed this microphone in his synagogue. And there's a big sign in the lobby, approved by the chief rabbinate of Israel. Yeah, approved for a Navy ship at sea, not for your shul. So people sometimes take a step that wasn't intended, and once it's out, and this is the danger. This is why, people, and I'll finish with this. People always ask, why can't the rabbis be more responsive to contemporary needs? And the answer is they are in many cases. But the rabbis know that once they allow something, Jews being Jews will take it the next step, which may not be allowed. And that's why sometimes they are very hesitant to approve certain things, because the Jewish people, being the Jewish people, will sometimes go beyond what was originally intended. So even though they may come up with creative workarounds for many situations, they are hesitant sometimes to go the next step in other cases, because they know that people will take it upon themselves to expand upon that which was originally intended. And that can sometimes get you in halachic trouble. So the Shabbos is a fascinating study in a contemporary workaround to a serious problem. But unfortunately, even though it helps many, many people, there are, as Milty will attest, individuals who take advantage, who could walk to shul. It's just not convenient.
But yes, the rabbi should make a determination.
Well, yeah, but there's no mashgiach riding the bus.
No, but you should have a pass, and the person that's basically that doesn't need it shouldn't have a pass.
Yeah, that's
years ago, Wally, I don't know if you remember, lot yachts.
yes.
Right, and they started. It was very, very successful, but they had mixed stances.
Right, and
then they pulled
the hashgacha. Right.
So it's the same thing. If people are doing things the wrong way, you have to have a rabbi going ahead and enforcing something.
Well, again, the guidelines exist. The question is whether people are willing. It's very difficult.
Nobody has to be your
Yeah, the driver is not going to say to somebody, "You don't qualify."
I just want to amend what I said about Madame Bola. There are people who took advantage of it, but it's not people who had no issues at all.
I understand.
There were people who could walk.
Yeah, it's more convenient.
It was difficult for them, and they were huffing and puffing when they got there. And then they decided to do it. And then sometimes it's the spouse of the person that's really handicapped that goes along, because when the spouse who is handicapped gets off the bus, they need assistance.
Okay,
to walk
fine.
further.
That might be okay.
Again, it's a slippery slope. That's all I'm saying. It's a slippery slope, and absent the mashgiach on the bus, it'll be very, very difficult to make these on-the-spot determinations. And people themselves know, the people who take advantage know full well that they're taking advantage. Okay, they know full well that they're taking advantage, and they do it anyway because it's there already. It's there, and I don't feel like walking today, or it looks like it might rain, or it's too hot. Again, once the cat is out of the bag, you can't put it back in again. So, again, the rabbinic capacity for innovation is alive and well, But the rabbis sometimes have to be very, very cautious because they know once you allow something, the Jewish people will take advantage of. And that's just part of who we are as a people. Okay. Have a happy Yom HaAtzmaut out there today.
Happy Yom HaAtzmaut.
Thank you, Wally.
Thank you, Wally. Bye-bye.
Hey, Wally, can we have dinner?
If there are 3 other women, well, no.
We have a sign of a rat.
Yishem Adonai Baruch Me'atov Yad Olam. Rosh Kam Shlot V'Chayinu. Amen. Just get on. Yeah, so you gotta go to the closest one. That halachically, that would be problematic. Specifically, no, I would imagine not. You're already here where it stops at every single stop, they're not doing